Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Casually Comics. Today, we're doing something a little different, as you can see by the format that I am here with some guests. We're going to be doing an interview, which is always exciting, always a good time. Going to get some behind the scenes talking about Vampirella Dark Reflections, the Vampiverse, the co-creation process, just a whole bunch of things. Wherever our whims take us, we shall see where it goes. So today I am joined by Jeannine Acheson and Tom Sniegoski. I think I did that okay. It was
Great,
pretty good, I think.
great, great.
Awesome sauce. So thank you so much for joining me today and coming to talk about your work.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. That's great.
So, Vampirella Dark Reflections is time of recording coming up pretty soon. It is going to be, I have it written down here, on the 5th of June, 2024.
Yes.
The 5th, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So this is going to be another outing into the Vampiverse, which is also something that you worked on together.
Yep.
Yes.
So how did you come to be working together and working on the Vampiverse?
It's a long story, but I'll make it very short. I was, for 15 years, I was a middle school English teacher here on the North Shore of Massachusetts. And I was doing a unit with my students, and I needed to have an author who had had books made into movies. And I thought of my old high school friend, Tom Sniegoski, who I hadn't spoken with in about 30 some odd years. And so I emailed him and asked him to come and talk to my kids, which he did. He presented in front of 300 seventh graders at the end of 2019. Then the pandemic hit. I was teaching remotely, and we decided, we had been still talking and just kind of kept in contact, and we decided to write a novel together, which we did. And then in about a year later, in 2020, Tom asked me if I wanted to write a comic with him, and that comic turned out to be the very first Vampirella that we wrote together. It was a Valentine's Day special that came out in 2021, and we've been writing comics and novels and all kinds of things ever since.
What was that transition like, going from novel to comic?
Difficult, very difficult. I was familiar enough with writing prose, having been a teacher for a long time and having been a student for a long time. But comic writing is completely different. It's a completely different mindset. And Tom had given me, he's a great teacher himself, and he had given me a lot of like how-to books to read, because I'm very much like a book learning type of person. But I think really jumping in and trying to, I don't know, like to picture things is just so much different in writing comics than it is from writing prose. So it's been very challenging, but ultimately very fun.
So I know that you both have different histories coming to Vampirella, because Tom, I know you have a bit of a longer history with the character.
I have a long history with Vampirella.
Dating even back to Harris. So how did you both come to it? Like Vampirella as a character?
Well, I came because I became friends with the original editor-in-chief at Harris, was Melanie Crawford Chadwick, who was unfamiliar with Vampirella, and Vampirella was originally published by Warren Publishing as black and white magazines that I read as a kid. Like when I was really young, I was reading them. And when Harris acquired that material, they weren't 100% sure what they acquired. So just by chance, in talking to Melanie at a New York convention, I kind of dropped a lot of knowledge that I guess she found nice. And she was like, you should be talking to me more often, because you know this stuff, you know what's going on. And like within like a couple of weeks of that meeting, I was writing Vampirella, as well as some of the other characters that they acquired. So I did multiple Vampirella books and spin-offs and miniseries and stuff for quite a few years when Harris had the character. And then I left and got pretty much involved with just writing novels. I didn't do much in the way of comics. But when Dynamite or Dynamic Forces acquired Vampirella, I'm really good friends with Nick Barucci, who
Mhm.
I've known for years and years and years. And around the time of Vampirella's 50th anniversary,
Yeah, 50th.
his 50th anniversary, he was like, "Oh, Tom, we want you to do something with Vampirella again." And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be fun." And he said, it's 25 years since your last run of Vampirella when you did it at Harris. And I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, that is. He goes, how about you come back and you pick up where you left off? So basically, it's the
Mhm.
Sniegoski verse. It's all the stuff that I created, not what anybody else did with the character after I left. It's all the stuff
Mhm.
that I did. So I could not say no to that. So I came back and I
Of
did,
course.
yeah, I came back and I did a new run of Vengeance of Vampirella and Vampirella Strikes. And while I was doing that, Jeannine and I started doing the Vampirella Valentine's Day special, and they said, "Oh, how would you two like to do more?" And that's where the Vampiverse was conceived.
Yeah.
So yeah, they dragged me back into Vampirella,
And then he dragged me with
and then
him.
it dragged you. Yeah, I didn't want to do it alone.
So when it comes to creating a multiverse for a character like Vampirella, who has all of these kind of different iterations, and Dynamite's also a place that lets you play around a little bit
Yeah,
with the canonicity of things,
yeah.
how does that work when you're deciding what to pull, what to put into the Vampiverse?
I think we're really only constrained by our imaginations. We've kind of, I think all of the Vampirellas that we've put into the Vampiverse have been, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had a Western Vampirella? Or wouldn't it be cool if we had one from the 1930s?
Yeah.
So I think they've been fantastic about just kind of giving us free reign a lot of the time.
I think they really like the idea of having multiple Vampirellas that you could possibly spin off,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
do their own stories. So I think that opportunity was pleasing to them. I think they were kind of like, oh, that could be a concept that we could get a lot out of,
Mhm.
a lot, So
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think it's as Jeannine said, your only constraint is your imagination. It's like, just thinks of all the kinds of stories that exist, and then
Mhm.
try to plop a Vampirella into those various stories, and that's kind of neat,
Yeah.
because you want to keep her Vampirella, but at the same time you try to take what people know of Vampirella and place them in this new weird situation, be it a Western or romance or sci-fi, or you know what I mean. It just allows you to say, all right,
Mhm.
this is what we know about Vampirella. How do we twist it and bend it and make it something interesting and different for this different type of Vampirella?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because when you are playing with a character like that, there's always that point that could be, it's too far. We've gone too far. It's not, Vampirella anymore. So what would you say is that point? Like, what would that be for you guys?
I kind of have a soft spot for her. She's always had a very strong supporting cast. So I find that if we somehow keep that supporting cast supporting her, no matter
Mhm.
what the universe is, it kind of works. And it's also that costume. That costume is so
Yeah.
iconic that even when you play with it a little bit, you don't
Yeah.
want to go too far, so it's
Yeah.
not recognizable anymore.
Right.
I think
Mhm.
the costume plays a big part in kind of anchoring
Yeah.
the cat. How do you take the costume and make it work in a Western setting?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the challenge that we have.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Mhm.
I mean, we've pulled it off. I mean,
I
almost
think
all,
so.
like all the various iterations that you see in the Vampiverse miniseries, if you look at them, you say, oh, that's a version of Vampirella. There's no like, oh, I don't know who that is, or I don't know what that is.
Mhm.
And our artist Daniel Main came up with quite a few Vampirellas. Like when we were talking about the Vampiverse, and at one point in the Vampiverse, like hundreds of thousands of Vampirellas descend on this one place. And he came up with like all kinds of Vampirellas and sent us sketches and said, oh, what do you think of this one? What do you think of that one? And he came up with like Vampirella and a few others.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
challenged us by
Yeah, he
just doing
really
really cool
Yeah.
like, oh, this, we have to do
Yeah.
something with that.
Yeah, she needs a story.
She needs to be
Yeah.
part of the main story.
Yeah. And the same with Dark Reflections when it came time for Lillith to have a costume.
Mhm.
He provided us with a number of different looks for Lilith.
But at the same time,
she's a daughter of Vampirella.
She's a daughter of Vampirella, but there's enough
Mhm.
of a Vampirella in her appearance and in her costume that you would look at it and you would say, this is a Vampirella character.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not so far removed that it should be
Mhm.
like a different
Random
character completely.
character,
Yeah.
So, since Lilith is more of the focus for this one, did that change the process of how you conceived of this book, or?
Well, when we were originally like talking about the type of story that we were going to tell, we knew we wanted to have Lilith as the protagonist, but at the same time, Dynamite was very keen on having a very strong Vampirella presence also.
Mhm.
So that's where the whole Dark Reflections things come, because it's a daughter of Vampirella and a Vampirella interacting
Mhm.
with each other in our storyline. So you've got
Mhm.
basically you get the best of both worlds. You have a daughter of Vampirella, or a new kind of Vampirella, and you've got an old fashioned kind of Vampirella also.
Mhm.
And so they play off each other quite nicely in our story.
What was your favorite part of writing that dynamic?
Oh, I think the fact that, is this a spoiler? Mothers and daughters. I think definitely the mother and daughter aspect of it. And I think it kind of let, I don't know how to say this. It kind of let me shine where I have strengths. Like, I have children. I have a daughter who's an adult now. And I think that I was able to bring things about my own relationship with my daughter and how I feel about her, how I feel about being a mom,
Mhm.
into Vampirella. So I think that kind of, I feel like the things that I contributed to this issue in that respect were my strengths.
Yeah, they're like
were
the strong
Yeah,
the relationship
relationshipy
stuff,
stuff.
where I was doing monsters. people punching and getting their heads ripped off and stuff. She was doing the nice relationships. I was handling the violence.
I definitely felt the mother-daughter stuff. I'm a mother too. My kids are a lot younger, but just that element of, being an older daughter and seeing your mother in a different way that you're not used to seeing her, because she's so different and beaten down for a bit in the Dark Reflections universe, was interesting. So.
Yeah.
It was something we definitely focused on.
Yes. I think we really kind of leaned into that one. Lord knows what my daughter thinks of this. I think she thinks I might be off the deep end, but that's okay.
So you two have been collaborating a lot together. What is your favorite part of the collaboration process?
Oh my gosh. I think it's honestly, I think it's the fun that we have together. Whether we're together in the South Shore office, Tom's house, or if we're Skyping 5 days a week, sometimes 6, we're together. And I like the fact that we have these physical representations, these comics and books and novels and graphic novels that have come from all of that fun. And it's so different from teaching. I've retired now, and this is my new job, and it's just 9 times out of 10, because it's still work, is just fun. And it's just so different from being in the classroom and being with 12-year-olds all day. Not that I didn't know that I did, but yeah, it's just the fun.
I like the fact that I'm not alone. I mean, I have a very long writing career. I've been writing since the early 90s, and it's so much different having a collaborator now, and not just me inside my own head, 18 hours a day. Now I bounce stuff off of her. I make suggestions. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? Before it was just all me. mean, I had to kind of do all of that. So it's kind of there's definitely, like she says, a fun aspect of it, and it's just nice. I think the being less solitary is definitely more fun than.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's ever anything that either of you bring that really surprises you, like completely alters the direction of where you were taking something, or?
I think I think a lot of the time, especially when you're dealing with Vampirella, she brings a woman's aspect to the character that I mean, I can imagine that stuff, but she brings a female perspective that I can't bring because I'm not female. So yeah, I really like she said with the Dark Reflections, the mother-daughter. Yeah, we were playing that up, but she could really play it up because she is a mother with a daughter. So she could play off of her own experiences, which I could never do. I would have to like imagine it and think in terms of, all right, what does that mean to me? You know. So she brings a very interesting perspective that I never had before to a lot of our work.
I think to the character as well. I think I like the fact that we're not writing, or I'm not part of writing a Vampirella book. It's more it's Vampirella. It's the Vampiverse, and I feel like I know Vampirella. I know the character. I've read Tom's stuff. But I don't know all of the iterations of Vampirella, and I feel that like we're not beholden to the canon and to all the structures that other people have set up for Vampirella. So while she's a character, it's kind of like the Vampiverse is separate and apart because they're Vampirellas, but they're different versions of Vampirella, and I think that makes me feel a little more comfortable writing the character.
Yeah, you're not a slave to continuity.
Yeah.
And I think that was a real smart of Nikki at Dynamite to let me go back to what I started originally way back in the 90s, because it was almost like, if you think about it, because the other writers have been writing Vampirella, it was almost like we were already starting the Vampiverse even before we knew what it was, because I was doing my thing, but like say Christopher Priest was doing his thing, which was very different than what I was doing. So we were already kind of coming up with a Vampiverse without having a name for it yet.
So now that you're working in it, do you find that as you're coming up with ideas for the Vampiverse, like when you're working on Dark Reflections, are you already seeing ways that it could spin out into even more things?
Oh yeah. In typical comic book writer fashion, you're always thinking about, well, what can I do with that? If this sells well and they want to do more, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Yeah. So, definitely. Yeah. Definitely more stuff with Lillith for sure. She's a really cool character. She's becoming more and more fleshed out and more interesting as we go with her.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about her?
Her enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think she's very, I think Vampirella, no matter what version you're writing, is going to be somebody who's, I think, a little world weary, like she's been at it for a while. Whereas with Lillith, she's kind of fresh. She's kind of like looking at things with a more optimistic view, wide-eyed, in like, filled with wonder, as opposed to somebody who's like, I know how this will turn out. So that's kind of fun. That kind of optimism. That optimism is kind of neat.
Youth.
Yes.
So of course, like you're talking about, you get attached to certain versions of the character.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite alternate Vampirella, and has she appeared yet?
Oh man.
She has appeared. I always Lord knows what we would ever do with her, but I always liked Neanderella.
Oh, Neanderella was the caveman Vampirella. That was actually
it was fun.
That was really kind of fun.
Yeah.
She was kind of fun.
I liked her.
Yeah, she was kind of.
I like the vamp. I really like her as well.
Yeah, the vamp was kind of like almost like a 1930s pulp version of Vampirella. That's my vamp. that was, and we got to actually write a one shot.
We did a
with the
one
vamps.
shot with her.
So that was really
She
fun.
was cool.
Yeah, she's very
I
cool.
like
We could do a lot with her.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
If given the opportunity, we could do a lot with that.
Yeah. I like Lillith too, though.
Lilith.
Cool.
Lilith was a kind of a focal character of in the supporting cast in Vampiverse.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a chance to kind of like develop her over the 6 issues that the Vampiverse series went.
Yeah.
I know for my viewers, I know a lot of them are curious. Like, what is the process like for a 6-issue mini? Like, what's the time frame? Like, how does it look? What does that process look like?
Well, once before we had pitched this idea to our editor Matt Idelson, and we kind of wrote out the story as we saw it, like all 6 issues. Like, this is what happens in the first issue, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. We get it approved by Matt. Oh, we only have 5 issues.
Was that 5?
I think we have 5 issues.
Five. Was Vampiverse 5?
Vampiverse was 6.
Vampiverse 6.
Yeah.
Dark Reflections
is 5.
Yeah. Okay.
And once it gets approved, then we start drafting, and we take the summary for the first issue and literally like lay it out page by page. And we do it either here together in Tom's office or over Skype in a Google Doc. And we literally like lay it out page by page. Like, this happens here, that happens there. Once the whole thing is laid out panel by panel, page by page, then we go back in and script it and put in like sound effects and dialogue,
captions, and
yeah. And it takes us we probably, our fastest turnaround for a script, I think, was a couple of weeks.
Yeah, like 2 weeks.
A couple of weeks. And usually we have to turn them in like once a month. So we have about a month to work on them. We get edits, and then we take care of those usually pretty quickly from our editor. And then it goes to the artist, and he's drawing like crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about like a 5 or a 6 month process.
Do you find there's a big difference between 5 issues and 6?
I think 6 lets you spread out a little bit better.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a tendency to be a little long-winded, so I think having the opportunity to have that one more issue just makes me think that I can stretch my muscles a little bit more in terms of character or plot or whatever. This really probably that's probably crap, but you always in your mind, I wish I had that one more issue. I would have knocked it out of the park. 22 more pages would have been perfect. But I think when you know when you're going into your story, I think you plot to your story.
Yeah. Plot for the space
for the space you have. Like if I remember correctly, for the one shot, the Vampirella Valentine's special, which was Jeannine's first comic experience.
No clue what I was doing.
No clue what she was doing, which is fine because I was trying to teach her, and we were like plotting it out like she described. And I think we have
48 pages.
Did we have 48 pages?
48.
Or was it less?
No, it was 48.
48.
Because it was more than double of what we were allowed.
I think we were given 28 pages, and then we plotted out it was 48. We're like, I think this one's a little long.
Yeah. That was fun. We tend to do that now still, but we don't generally go double. We might be like 5 pages over or 6 pages.
Yeah, we may be a couple of pages here and there. So then you just trim some scenes back, and then you're usually good. But that was 48 pages. I'm like, that's a little much.
That's a little too much. That was fun.
But she'd never done it before, so I wanted to take full advantage of the doing. Yeah. So you see how I wasn't gonna like, that's too long. No, pull back. No, I just wanted to kind of like get it all out there, and then show the cleanup process. How do you cut back? How do you trim? How do you remove some scenes and still make it work?
Right.
So it was a learning experience.
Mm-hmm. So now, like, knowing that you have that limit, like when it comes to, for example, Dark Reflections, were there any scenes that you were like this 100%, like no matter what, this needs to be here?
Probably a lot of like the fight scenes or the like reveals of like the antagonist for Vampirella in that world.
Yeah.
A lot of times we make sure that we leave room for Daniel Main, our artist, to stretch his wings, because he's just fantastic.
Yeah, he's really cool, and we don't want to like constrict him. Oh, this 7 panels on a page. We want him to be able to stretch his artistic muscles a little bit. So we kind of try to think like that when we're laying out a page, especially like, all right, Daniel, this is something that Daniel can really let loose on.
Yeah.
Let's give him room to do it.
Yeah.
Did you have any moments like that in this where the art came back and you were just like, this is amazing?
Actually, most of
that,
it.
I know that happens almost every time we work with him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he makes us look good. I mean, again, when you're laying these things out and scripting these things, you have a specific idea of what something looks like in your brain. He a lot of the times will take kind of what we had in our brain and make it cooler than what was in our brain. So it's kind of like, I never thought of that. Yeah. That's really neat. So he always surprises.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
And a lot of times too, especially for this one, for Dark Reflections, he was really instrumental in creating some of the minions of
the monsters.
Yeah, he created them and so it was cool for us to be like, oh, so there's some that are going to fly, there are some that are going to be on ground, and that kind of helps us plot things out and lay things out, because we have in our heads what he sees. Yeah. So it's helpful to us too.
Yeah, he was very specific too. Because we were kind of general. Oh yeah, they're going to be different kinds of these chaotic creatures are going to be this way and that way. And he went and he was like, all right, this is this kind. And he drew them. And this is this kind. And he drew them. And like, oh, all right. So when we were actually scripting, we could kind of picture which of these creatures are going to be in that particular moment in the script.
Yeah.
So how has it been in general, like interacting with fans of Vampirella who are coming into the Vampiverse? Do you find that there's a lot of people who are coming to it and discovering it for the first time through these stories?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this the cool and interesting thing about Vampirella is the fact that you've got your old time fans that go back before Harris, like the Warren black and white magazines, and then you have the newer readers who are coming into it like, oh, what's this character all about? I've heard about her, but I don't know anything about her. Those are the people that I really like, because they're not slaves. I find that a lot of the older readers who remember the black and white magazines want Vampirella one way and one way only. I think it kind of ruffles their feathers a bit that she's not that exact same character from the 70s.
That she's kind of evolved into something
which I think is typical of a lot of comic book characters that have been around for a long time. People kind of want them to stay the way they remember them. Yeah. They don't want to see it deviate in any way from that thing. So
change is hard.
Change is tough. But I think I've actually had a lot of the older fans really like what we've been doing and what I've been doing and stuff. Yeah. So that makes me feel good that they can say, all right, yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
You can tell they're not 100% happy, but they're okay. They're okay with it. So
they've been very complimentary, like at conventions and stuff. They'll come up and they'll be like, "Oh, Tom writes Vampirella," and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, you guys both write Vampiverse, right?" And so it's they've all been very kind, very complimentary.
Yeah.
So some of them are accepting change.
Some of them.
What would you say has been the biggest shift or change for Vampirella just over time?
Over the years?
Yeah.
I think she's become, and this is not meant as an insult at all. No. She's become a little less goofy. Like if you read the 70s stories, they're really fun, but they're kind of like really not all that involved. They're really simple. They're very simple, and they don't make a hell of a lot of sense. Like you read them and you're like, all right, and then the story ends and you're like, huh, what did I just read? I mean, they're a little, they're definitely products of their time, like that 70s black and white craze, like the black and white magazines were. You didn't have to follow the comics code at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So your stories could be a little more sexy, a little more violent. So they took full advantage of that. I think, nudity and things like that in the magazines. So I don't know. The stories are good, but they're. I think as I came on and I started to like build a universe. Like, not only did she have a supporting cast, she had a universe. She had like characters that she interacted with. She had villains that were created specifically for that time period in like the 90s. I think she became a little more action oriented. The stories became a little more like, I don't want to say superhero-y, but in a way, little more like superhero-y. Remember, it was a time for Buffy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so
Mm-hmm.
kind of was leaning to that badass female action hero. And I wrote Buffy too for a while, so
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of neat to kind of like think of Vampirella in that sensibility, to kind of say, all right, what works in Buffy that I could apply to a character like Vampirella who has a history. What can I play with to kind of make her a little bit more of the time, instead of like keeping her firmly locked into that 70s kind of storytelling. This kind of took her into that whole 90s territory. The action and big supporting cast and stuff like that. So she's just basically evolved, as most comic characters kind of do. They kind of evolve. So that's for whatever happens to be like the big thing in comics at the moment, she kind of fit that mold. She fit into that mold for that time period.
Now, the evolution of her lore has been fascinating. Like, I always find it amusing Draculina, like now her sister, who was basically in one issue back in like the 70s,
Yeah.
one cameo issue, and now it's like she's her sister, and there's a whole
Yep.
giant lore behind it. It's just
Yep.
fascinating to see things move in that direction.
Yeah, well, even like Panther, we wrote a Panther miniseries, and Panther was a character just appeared in Vampirella, like a spin-off type character.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice. It was fun to take that character, which really didn't. It was kind of schizophrenic in terms of what her origins were. It was kind of like multiple takes. So it was kind of fun to take that character and kind of give her a more solid, definitive origin. That was fun.
That was
really fun.
That was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
So you like having like that space to be able to play in all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, we have every respect for where the character came from.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's really cool when there are lots of open spaces that you can kind of fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like flush out the character and give her a really interesting background and history and stuff like that. So that's neat. That's really neat. I enjoy doing that.
Now that you're making like the Vampiverse and these spin-offs and things, do you find that you have your own kind of lore and continuity that's evolving and kind of becoming something that if it spun off, would you want it to stay the same? Like, if somebody else came on, would be like, no, this is the lore. Would you want it to?
No, I think we have our own kind of continuity within the Vampiverse, but I think if somebody else came on and wanted to play in the sandbox, I'd be like, yeah, come on, do it. What do you got?
So that's the beauty. That's the beauty of the whole Vampiverse, is that you can tell any kind of Vampirella story you want. Yeah. So basically, without realizing we were doing it, we fixed the fact that there are multiple Vampirella continuities.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right, so you can just say it's all part of the Vampiverse. That's that one,
Yeah.
and this
Mhm.
story is this one, and
Yeah.
So we kind of help Dynamite fix what could potentially be a problem. And people
Yeah.
are like, well, the Vampirella that I just read, she was this way, but this one, she's a
Right.
different type of character.
Yeah.
Well, now here's the answer. You know,
It's
you
the
read
Vampiverse.
that particular continuity, and
Mhm.
this is another continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I do like about Dynamite with just how they handle their characters in general, because it allows for some very interesting and random adventures as well, especially when you get into the crossovers,
Yes.
which also happen with Vampirella. There's just some fascinating things
Oh yeah.
happening over there.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
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 But again,
Were there
I don't think at that time they were. I think they were just doing fun stories.
Yeah.
But now we can explain it. Now we can say this is how these all fit, because they fit into the whole Vampiverse continuity.
Yeah.
Like, so it's any continuity you want.
Yeah.
It's just a different aspect of
Yeah.
of that universe.
Would you ever want to do like one of those crazy crossovers with one of the other characters out there, or?
Oh, I would. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
If
I could wrap my head around it, yeah.
See, Jeannine is still
very linear.
She's still learning. She hasn't quite the craziness of comic books hasn't quite infected her completely.
No.
So she still struggles a bit here and there with
occasionally.
stuff.
Much better than I was.
Yeah.
But
I wrote the Vampirella Shadowhawk, which was a Harris Image crossover.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm responsible for one of those crazy crossovers from the late '90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm game for anything. If they ask me to do it, I'll do it. What the hell? If it's fun and it's a challenge, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, it's all a challenge.
Yeah, it's all a challenge. More for you.
For me.
More for you than me.
What would you say is the biggest challenge?
What's the biggest challenge?
Yeah, what would you say is the biggest challenge?
Imagining different types of shenanigans that Vampirella could possibly get into, or for any character to get into. I think I tend, being relatively new to the writing world and comics, I think I tend to have an idea and go, no, that probably wouldn't work. So I think for me, kind of like learning to let go and just kind of like
spitball.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of plotting this crazy stuff, is that you get that germ of an idea, and you just keep going. Well, what if, and what then? How could we make this even crazier? How about we add an elf? You know, that it's like that. It's like a snowball.
Like, I might have an idea, and before I know it, he's like 3 miles ahead of me. He's just gone, and he's got all kinds of scenarios, and this happens and that happens, and I'm still like 5 feet from the starting line going, well, there's a girl. Yeah. So I'll get there maybe.
You'll get there. This is my job. I'm teaching her how to get there.
Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to discuss all of this with me. It's been really fascinating. And where can people pick up Vampirella Dark Reflections?
Find comic stores near you.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. They should have it. It's coming out June 5th, Wednesday. So in next week after next, I think. Yeah.
So they can go to their store and say, pull that for me. Put that in my put that in my subscription.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I think there is a pre-order thing as well, and other things. I'll put those links down below in the video box so people can find them.
Yeah, very cool.
And thanks again for coming on and chatting with all of us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, anytime.
It was really fun.